You're not growing because you're creating for the algorithm and not for the people. My name is Keisha Martin. I am a YouTuber who is just trying to make some sense of this thing that we got called life right here. And on this channel, I simply talk about my experiences in it. Today, I'm talking about how you're not growing your channel, your page, your videos, and it's because you're creating for the algorithm and not for the people. Most creators don't realize when it happens. At some point, the focus quietly shifts. You start thinking about the other person on the other side of the screen and start thinking about the system, the keywords, which hooks. You think about watch time, click through rate, posting frequency, and trends. You tell yourself you're being strategic, but growth stalls anyway. Views start to plateau, engagement feels shallow, the comments dry up, the content feels technically correct, but something about it feels empty. You start wondering why nothing is connecting the way you expected it to. Here's the uncomfortable truth most people don't want to face. You're not growing because you're creating for the algorithm, not for the people. The people matter the most. And truthfully, the algorithm, it could tell. The algorithm doesn't reward obedience, it rewards response. And that distinction matters more than any tactic you can come up with. A lot of creators fall into this trap because they're trying to do the right thing. They watch videos, study the best practices, optimize titles and thumbnails. They follow advice that work for someone else in a different time, a whole totally different context. Over time, the content starts sounding correct instead of real. Correct content rarely connects. When you create for the algorithm, you start filtering your thoughts before you express them. You soften the edges. You say what you think will perform instead of what you actually believe. That creates a distance. And people don't engage with distance. They engage with clarity, emotion, and recognition. The algorithm notices that lack of engagement long before you do. Here's the reason why it happens. Algorithms are predictable, but people are not. Creating for the algorithm feels safer because it gives you rules, and rules reduce uncertainty. Uncertainty makes people uncomfortable, especially for people who carry responsibilities in real life. I need to know what I'm doing. I can't just leave it up to chance, up to risk. If you're used to environments where effort leads to clear outcomes, you know what I'm talking about. Like going to work, you go to work, get paid. You wouldn't really do it if there was uncertainty involved. Creating content feels risky. There's no guaranteed reward, no supervisor telling you that you're on the right track. Good job. No immediate feedback loop that makes sense. So creators look for structure. They need it. We need it. They try to reverse engineer success instead of earning it through connection. That's when content starts sounding like everyone else. Same phrases, start pacing like everybody, giving advice like them, same type of energy. You know what I'm talking about. The algorithm doesn't need another version of what already exists out there. Neither do people. People don't watch because you check the right boxes. They watch because something about the content makes them feel seen, understood, or challenged. Algorithms measure that behavior. Behavior is driven by emotion. When you create for the people, behavior follows naturally. When you create for the algorithm, emotion gets stripped out of that. That's why so many channels feel polished, but they're forgettable. Another issue shows up though when creators prioritize optimization way too early. And optimization without identity, that also leads to confusion. Confuses the audience, it definitely confuses the algorithm. You tweak hooks before you know your voice. You start chasing trends before you understand your own message. Then adjust the thumbnails before you understand why someone should care anyways. That creates noise instead of a clear signal. And the algorithm thrives on signal. Signal comes from consistency of message, not the consistency of your tactics. When people can't tell what you stand for, they don't stick around. When they don't stick around, the algorithm stops pushing your content. Simple as that. So now creators blame the algorithm for a people problem. And there's also emotional cost to creating this way. Creating for the algorithm disconnects you from your own work. You stop believing You stop enjoying the process. You feel pressured to perform instead of permission to express yourself. And then burnout shows up. And it shows up faster because the work no longer feels honest. Your nervous system knows when you're performing instead of communicating. That tension comes through on camera. People pick it up immediately, even if they can't explain why. Is why. Still, another subtle problem is audience mismatch. When you chase the algorithm, you attract viewers who are chasing content, right? They're chasing content, not a connection. They scroll quickly, they don't comment, won't even return. They move on. And that kind of attention looks good in analytics, but it feels hollow. In reality, growth that doesn't come with loyalty doesn't grow. It doesn't build or compound. Creators who grow sustainably don't optimize for reach first. They optimize for resonance, that resonance frequency. Resonance creates the retention. Retention creates trust. And then trust creates growth, that real growth. The algorithm simply amplifies what people already respond to. And here's the part that trips people up the most. Creating for people feels slower. It doesn't always trend. It doesn't. Or it looks impressive at first. It often grows quietly through comments. You know, the comments that feel personal from viewers who come back repeatedly. They say they got messages that say, "This felt like you were talking to me." That's what matters. Those signals don't show up in dashboards immediately. They show up in the community. The algorithm notices them later. Still, another reason creators get stuck is because they confuse clarity with simplicity. Creating for the people doesn't mean dumbing things down. It means being specific about who you're talking to and why you're talking to them. Being specific repels the wrong audience, and it will attract the right one. And that scares people. Creators worry about limiting reach. They worry about saying the wrong thing and being misunderstood by everybody. So they stay vague, stay mysterious. That vague content, it doesn't offend anyone, but it doesn't connect with anyone either. And connection requires risk. Risk doesn't mean controversy. Risk means honesty. Honesty about what you've lived and what you've learned the hard way. The truth about what frustrates you, what connection that you need, and what questions that you have yet to be answered. People don't need no perfection. They need relatability and clarity. And another important shift is understanding who the algorithm actually serves. Don't get it twisted. The algorithm serves the viewers. It doesn't serve creators. Creators are a tool used by the algorithm. Its job is to keep people watching. If your content does that, it gets rewarded. If it doesn't. Basically, if he dies, he dies. The algorithm doesn't care how hard you worked. It cares how long people stayed and how often they come back to watch your videos. Those behaviors are driven by relevance and emotional engagement, not optimization tricks. Creators who grow, they understand this deeply. They think in conversations, not broadcasts. They imagine one person watching, not thousands. They speak directly instead of generally. That's why the content feels grounding. Creating for people also changes how you interpret results. So instead of asking, did this perform? You start asking, who did this help instead of chasing? Instead of chasing views, you look for patterns. Instead of reacting emotionally to every upload, you study what resonates over time. That mindset shift reduces a burnout. Burnouts thrive when effort feels disconnected from the real meaning. When you create for people, meaning stays close to the work. There's also a practical benefit that most creators miss. People who feel understood, they share the content. Hey, listen to this. This me. They share it with their friends. Algorithms don't share videos. People do. A single viewer who feels deeply seen is more valuable than 1,000 passive viewers who just scroll past. That's how real growth starts. It doesn't explode, it spreads nicely. Another mistake creators make is assuming they need to teach constantly. They better, I'm above, Let me tell you what you need to do. You know, they just these teachers. Not every video needs to educate. Some videos exist to articulate a feeling that people couldn't put into words. And some exist to validate an experience or simply ask better questions. Those videos often outperform these educational ones in the long run, teacher, Mr. Teacher, Miss Teacher, because they build identity alignment. They align with the person, not you. People follow creators who articulate their internal experience better than they could themselves. Their internal experience, the person's life. You saying what I live. You're saying what I think. Not telling me what you think and what you live. I'm not a fan of you. I am a fan of myself. That's a people first skill, not a algorithmic one. Here's the shift that changes everything. Stop asking what the algorithm wants. Start asking who you're talking to. Are they tired of hearing this? What do they feel but rarely say out loud? Do they need reassurance? You answer those questions honestly, and the algorithm will catch up. It will know what to do. It is a sophisticated program. The creators who last don't chase this system. They build a relationship with the audience. And that system amplifies that relationship over time. That's why copying trends rarely leads to long-term growth. Trends flatten, boom, you out of here. Individuality, that is what creates loyalty. Being yourself. Another truth worth sitting with, though. The algorithm is not your enemy. It's neutral. It reacts to people. If people don't respond, the algorithm is not punishing you. It's actually just reflect the reality of what's going on in your page and in your video content. And that reflection can hurt, but it's also very, very useful. It tells you when you drifted away from a real connection, when you out of line. And fixing that doesn't require more tactics. It requires recalibrating who you created for. If your content started feeling forced, genetic, or draining, that's usually the signal. You didn't lose creativity. What you did, you lost alignment. And alignment returns when you start performing for a system and start communicating with people again, as a people, as a person. That doesn't mean ignoring best practices. It means using them as tools, not as a substitute for substance. Structure supports message. It doesn't replace it. Once a message leads, tactics help instead of hurt. So if growth slowed, if engagement feels shallow, if creating feels heavier than it used to, that is your checkpoint. And ask yourself honestly, who you're making content for. If the answer sounds like the algorithm, that's likely the reason nothing is moving. Shift back to the people. Shift back to the real people. Speak to one person at a time. Be specific, be honest. Let your experience shape the message. The algorithm will follow. It always does. If this refrain how you've been thinking about growth, there's another real conversation that builds directly on this one, because creating for people is the only step. That's all we care about here. How you structure that message determines whether it reaches the right ones. Make it for the people. Make the videos for the people. Everything else is going to solve itself. The algorithm and the creative search insights and understanding I'm going to just make this about it because they're looking for this. That's empty. That's hollow. If you're passionate about it, go in that direction. If you lived it, you got experience that you could share, people can tell the genuine real deal. That's all I'm saying here. For the people. Peace.